The silence in the command center was absolute. Every eye fixed on the massive holographic display floating above the central platform. Admiral Jiho Kim stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his face carved from stone as he watched the alien transmission play for the second time. The creature on the screen was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with scales that shifted between deep purple and black. Its eyes were yellow slits that seemed to look through the camera and into the souls of everyone watching. This was High Chancellor Velmarith of the Valdris Imperium, ruler of 2,000 star systems and conqueror of 100 species. Humans of Earth. The translated voice boomed through the speakers, cold and mechanical. Your species has been observed. Your expansion into space has been noted. You have built colonies on 6 worlds without permission from the Galactic Authority. This cannot continue. Jiho felt his jaw tighten. Permission. As if humanity needed permission to explore the stars that had called to them since the beginning of their existence. Velmarith continued, his clawed hand gesturing dismissively. The Valdris Imperium hereby claims dominion over your solar system and all human settlements. You will comply with the following terms. First, all military vessels will be surrendered immediately. Second, your governments will dissolve and accept Valdris administration. Third, 20% of all planetary resources will be delivered to our collection fleets annually. Fourth, Valdris garrisons will be established on each of your inhabited worlds to ensure compliance. The hologram shifted to show images of destruction. 2 human colonies, Kepler Station and New Horizon, reduced to burning ruins. Bodies floating in space. Children's toys drifting among the debris. These colonies refused our generous offer of protection, Velmarith said without emotion. They were moved. You have 72 hours to accept our terms. Refusal will result in the complete sterilization of your homeworld. This transmission ends. The hologram vanished. For 3 full seconds, nobody spoke. Then the command center erupted in voices, officers shouting over each other, demanding answers, suggesting strategies. Jiho raised one hand, and the room fell silent again. "Get me President Cho," he said quietly, and summoned Fleet Captain Hyan Park and Commander Soman Lee. "We have decisions to make." 20 minutes later, they gathered in the secure conference room deep within the orbital station. President Mina Cho appeared via holographic link from the presidential complex in Seoul. Her face was pale but composed. Fleet Captain Hyan Park paced like a caged tiger, his broad shoulders tense with barely controlled anger. Commander Soman Lee sat perfectly still, her fingers steepled in front of her face. "They're bluffing," Hyan said immediately. "They can't possibly have enough ships to occupy Earth and maintain control over 2,000 other systems. It's a scare tactic, is it?" Mina asked softly. "They destroyed 2 colonies. 8,000 people. Hyan, gone in minutes. Which proves they're afraid of us," Hyan shot back. "If they were truly all-powerful, they would have just taken what they wanted. Instead, they're negotiating. That means they see us as a threat." Jiho turned to Soman. The commander had been silent, her dark eyes distant. She was the architect of humanity's greatest secret, and her opinion mattered more than anyone else's in this room. "What do you think?" he asked. Soman looked up, meeting his gaze. "I think Captain Hyan is partially correct. The Valdris Empire is vast, but empires that large grow soft. My intelligence network has been gathering data on them for 5 years. Their last major military conflict was 400 years ago. They rely on intimidation and their reputation. Most species surrender without a fight. Most species don't have what we have," Hyan said with satisfaction. "No," Soman agreed, allowing herself a small smile. "They don't. Project Prometheus is ready. 847 warships, all equipped with weapons technology the Valdris have never encountered. Our stealth systems are decades ahead of anything in their fleet. Our railguns can punch through their shields. Our quantum drives can outmaneuver their ships. Maya leaned forward in her hologram. You're talking about war. About fighting an empire that has conquered 100 species. How many will die, Soman? How many of our children will we sacrifice? All of them if we surrender, Soman replied, her voice hard. The Valdris don't occupy planets, Madame President. They strip them. They take resources, enslave populations, and leave behind ruins. In 50 years, there won't be humans anymore. There will only be slaves who used to be human. The silence that followed was heavy. Jiho watched Mina's face, saw the weight of 8 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. He had known her for 20 years, had watched her rise from diplomat to senator to president. She was a woman of peace, of negotiation and compromise. But she was also a woman who understood when compromise meant death. Show me, Maya said finally. Show me what we've built. Soman activated her tablet and the conference room walls became transparent, showing the space beyond the station. At first, there was nothing but stars. Then Soman entered a command, and the invisible became visible. Warships, hundreds of them, hanging in the darkness of space like sleeping predators. Sleek destroyers bristling with railgun batteries. Massive carriers that could launch thousands of fighters. Cruisers equipped with plasma torpedoes. Frigates so small and fast they could dance between enemy fire. And battleships, 30 of them, each one a fortress of metal and fury. 50 years, Soman said quietly. 50 years of building in secret. Every nation contributed. Every sacrifice was made willingly. We knew this day would come. The galaxy is not a peaceful place. We knew that eventually someone would try to take what we built. Hyan stopped pacing and stood at attention. Give the order, Madame President. Let us show these aliens what happens when they threaten Earth. Mina closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Gio saw steel in her gaze. What will our response be, Admiral? Jiho allowed himself a thin smile. Simple, Madame President. One word. No. The transmission was sent on every frequency, broadcast across the entire solar system and beyond. One word in 100 languages, but its meaning was universal and unmistakable. No dot in the command center. Officers watched their sensors as the 72-hour deadline expired. Lieutenant Deho Song called out from his station, his voice tight. Admiral, we have contacts. Multiple hyperspace signatures emerging at the edge of the system. How many? Jiho asked, though he already knew it would be bad. Counting now, sir. 300. 500. 800. Deho's voice rose with each number. Admiral, we're reading over 2,000 Valdris warships entering our system. Officers exchanged worried glances. 2,000 ships. It was more than anyone had expected for the first wave. Hyan moved to stand beside Jiho, his face grim but determined. They brought an armada, Hyan said. Yes, Jiho agreed. He looked around the command center at his crew, at the men and women who had trained for this moment. Then he pressed the fleet-wide communication button. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Deploy from stealth positions. Activate weapon systems. Launch all fighters. Today, humanity draws a line in the stars. Today, we tell the galaxy that Earth will never bow. All ships, engage the enemy. The Terran Defense Fleet decloaked as one, 800 warships suddenly appearing around the Valdris Armada like wolves surrounding prey. And the first battle for Earth's freedom began. Fleet Admiral Thorgash sat in his command throne aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The human solar system stretched before him on the tactical display, primitive and undefended. His 2,000 ships represented just a fraction of Valdris' military might. But it would be more than enough to crush these upstart mammals. All ships, advance formation, he commanded in the harsh Valdris tongue. Target the third planet. Prepare bombardment weapons. We will show them the price of defiance. His censor officer, a younger Valdris named Corthan, studied his screens with growing confusion. Admiral, I'm detecting no military vessels. No defense platforms. No weapons satellites. It's as if they have nothing. Thorgash laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Because they have nothing, fool. They sent their pathetic no, and now they hide on their dirtball, hoping we will show mercy. He leaned forward. We will show them Valdris mercy. Begin the attack. The Armada surged forward, engines blazing as they closed the distance to Earth. They passed the orbit of the 8th planet, then the 7th. Nothing opposed them. Thorgash began composing the report he would send to High Chancellor Vomorith. This conquest would take less than a day. Then Commander Jiwanon gave the order from her stealth frigate Shadow Strike. All ships to cloak. Fire at will. 36 human warships materialized out of nothing, appearing within weapons range of the Valdris Vanguard. For one frozen moment, the Valdris sensors couldn't process what they were seeing. Then the railguns fired. The sound in space is a myth, but inside the Valdris ships, the impacts were deafening. Slugs of tungsten carbide alloy, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, punched through energy shields designed to stop plasma and lasers. The physics were simple and brutal. The shields had nothing to disperse. The solid projectiles just kept going, ripping through armor plating like paper. 40 Valdris cruisers died in the first 7 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Thorgash roared, his satisfaction turning to shock. Return fire. Where did they come from? But the humans weren't finished. G1's frigates unleashed their plasma torpedoes, blue-white spheres of superheated matter that splashed across Valdris hulls, melting them down to their framework. Human destroyers added their own railgun fire, a continuous stream of destruction that tore through the Valdris formation. Captain Tajum Bey commanded the frigate Indomitable from the center of the chaos. His ship shuddered as Valdris fusion missiles finally found their mark, explosions blooming along the hull. Damage reports flooded his screens. Engineering report. He shouted over the alarms. Main reactor is failing, Captain. His chief engineer responded. We've got fires in 3 compartments. Life support is critical. Tajin looked at his tactical display. His ship was dying, but directly ahead, a Valdris carrier was launching fighter craft, preparing to swarm the human fleet. He made his decision in less than a second. All hands, abandon ship. This is the captain. You have 90 seconds to reach the escape pods. Sir, what are you doing? His executive officer demanded. Buying time, Tajin said calmly. He strapped himself into the command chair and locked the override codes. Now go. That's an order. The crew fled. Tajun waited until the last escape pod launched. Then he armed every remaining weapon on his ship and pointed the Indomitable directly at the Valdris carrier. His fingers hovered over the engine controls. For Earth, he whispered, and slammed the throttle to maximum dot. The Indomitable accelerated to 0.5 light speed in 18 seconds. When it struck the Valdris carrier, the impact released more energy than a dozen fusion bombs. The carrier exploded, and the blast caught 3 more Valdris ships, creating a chain reaction that carved a hole in their formation. Admiral Jiho Kim watched from his command ship as the Indomitable made its sacrifice. He allowed himself 3 seconds of grief for Taejin and his crew. Then he put it aside and focused on the battle. Signal the fleet. Fighting withdrawal pattern Delta. Fall back to the asteroid belt. Captain Yuna Kang received the order aboard her destroyer Defiance. She was already engaged with 4 Valdris frigates, her ship twisting and dodging through their fire like a dancer. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Min-Soo Han, called out target solutions as fast as the guns could fire. Lead ship, locked. Firing. The railgun spoke again, and another Valdris ship went dark. But more were coming. Always more. The humans were outnumbered 3-1, and even with superior technology, numbers mattered. All ships, follow me, Yuna ordered. She plotted a course that took her fleet screaming through Jupiter's gravity well, using the massive planet to whip them around at impossible speeds. The Valdris pursued, but their ships were older, their tactics rigid. When Yuna's fleet emerged from behind Jupiter, they were positioned perfectly behind the Valdris pursuers. Now! Yuna shouted. Her battle group opened fire at point-blank range. 15 Valdris ships died before they could even turn around. The rest scattered, their formation broken. Their confidence shattered along with it. The human fleet retreated to the asteroid belt in good order, leaving behind 90 destroyed ships, but taking 300 Valdris vessels with them. As they took up defensive positions among the tumbling rocks, using them for cover and as weapons, Admiral Jiho surveyed the battlefield. Status report, he requested. Commander Somin Lee appeared on his screen, her uniform torn and a cut above her eye leaking blood. She had been aboard one of the ships that took damage. We've lost 90 ships, Admiral. Casualties are estimated at 12,000 dead, 8,000 wounded. But we hurt them badly. 300 Valdris ships destroyed, and their formation is in disarray. Will they retreat? Jiho asked. No, Somin said with certainty. Thorgash is a proud warrior. He brought 2,000 ships to fight an enemy he thought was defenseless. He's not going to limp home after losing 15% of his fleet to primitives. He'll regroup and come at us again. She was right. Within an hour, the Valdris fleet reorganized and began advancing toward the asteroid belt. But now they moved cautiously, their shields at maximum, their formations tight. They had learned to respect human weapons. The second engagement was longer and bloodier. Human ships used the asteroids brilliantly, hiding behind the rocks, firing from cover, then relocating before the Valdris could target them effectively. Commander Woojin Choi led a squad of corvettes that mined several asteroids with explosives, then lured Valdris destroyers into pursuit. When the mines detonated, the asteroids became fragmentation bombs, shredding the pursuing ships, but the Valdris adapted. They began destroying asteroids from range, eliminating cover. They used their numbers to surround human positions. And slowly, inevitably, they began to push the humans back. Jiho watched his fleet dwindle. 100 ships lost. 120. 150. Each one represented hundreds of lives, families that would receive terrible news, children who would grow up without parents. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Then, Lieutenant Dae-ho Song called out from sensors. Admiral! Multiple hyperspace signatures emerging at the edge of the asteroid belt. It's... Admiral, it's the second fleet. The Mars shipyards had finished their work early. Captain Yoonji Han brought 300 fresh warships into the battle, appearing behind the Valdris fleet while they were focused on the asteroid belt. Her carriers launched wave after wave of fighters, small craft that swarmed the larger Valdris ships like angry insects. Caught between two forces, the Valdris formation collapsed. Thorgash screamed orders, trying to restore cohesion, but his subordinates panicked. Ships fled in all directions. Some tried to fight. Most just tried to survive. Press the attack, Jiho ordered. Don't let them regroup. The battle became a slaughter. Human ships hunted fleeing Valdris vessels across the solar system. By the time the surviving Valdris ships managed to escape into hyperspace, they had lost over 800 vessels. Less than half of Thorgash's armada limped away. In the command center, officers cheered and embraced. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an empire that had never known defeat, humanity had won. But Jiho didn't celebrate. He looked at the casualty reports. 160 ships lost, 21,000 dead. And he knew this was just the beginning. The Valdris would come again, and next time they would bring more. Still, as he looked around at his crew, at their exhausted but triumphant faces, he allowed himself a small smile. They had sent a message today. Earth would not bow. Earth would not break. And the galaxy was watching. High Chancellor Velmoreth stood before the assembled War Council in the Grand Palace on the Valdris homeworld. His scales had darkened to almost black, a sign of his rage. Around the chamber, the greatest military commanders of the Empire shifted nervously. They had never seen their leader this angry. "Explain to me," Velmoreth said, his voice dangerously quiet, "how 800 primitive human vessels destroyed 2,000 of our finest ships." None of the commanders spoke. Finally, Fleet Commander Calther stepped forward. He was old for a Valdris, his scales pale with age, but his eyes were still sharp. "High Chancellor, the humans possess technology we did not anticipate. Their weapons penetrate our shields. Their ships can become invisible to our sensors. And they fight with a ferocity we have not encountered in centuries. Then we will match their ferocity," Velmoreth declared. He gestured to the holographic star map floating in the center of the chamber. "Calther, you will take the Grand Armada. 5,000 ships, including the Extinction-class vessels. You will reduce Earth to ash and cinder. Every human world will burn. They wanted war. We will give them extinction." Calther bowed low. "It will be done, High Chancellor. The humans will learn why no species defies the Valdris Empire." 3 weeks later, the largest war fleet ever assembled by the Valdris Empire emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 5,000 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged, their shields at maximum. At the center of the fleet were 3 Extinction-class vessels, each one the size of a small moon, carrying weapons designed to crack planets open. Aboard his flagship Righteous Vengeance, Calther opened a channel to Earth. "Humans, this is your last warning. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Your soldiers will be allowed to live as slaves. Your leaders will be executed quickly. Your children will be raised as Valdris servants. This is more than you deserve." The response came from Admiral Jiho Kim. "Commander Calther, this is Admiral Kim of the Terran Defense Fleet. Your offer is rejected. If you want Earth, come and take it." Calther's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "So be it. Target the human homeworld. Prepare extinction weapons. On my command." The 3 massive vessels began to glow, their planet-killer weapons charging. It would take 30 minutes to reach full power. Then they would unleash beams of concentrated energy that would boil Earth's oceans and burn away its atmosphere. Calther had used these weapons twice before, and both times he had watched entire civilizations die in minutes. Then Admiral Jiho gave the order. "All ships deploy." The space around Earth suddenly filled with warships. 800 vessels, every single combat-capable ship humanity possessed. They had stripped the colonies bare, recalled every patrol, abandoned every outpost. Everything depended on this moment. Captain Yoonji Han commanded the carrier group from the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit. Around her flagship, 20 carriers began launching fighters. Thousands of small, agile craft poured into space like a swarm of metallic insects. Each fighter was piloted by an AI core, learning and adapting in real time, guided by human tactical officers. "Launch complete," her operations officer reported. 4,000 fighters deployed and engaging. Wing Commander Seojun Park flew his experimental hunter-killer Wraith at the head of his squadron. His fighter was equipped with an electromagnetic pulse weapon designed specifically to disable Valdra's computer systems. He selected his target, one of the massive Extinction-class vessels, and accelerated. "All wings follow my lead," he transmitted. "We need to take down those planet killers before they can fire." The Valdra's fleet opened fire, filling space with fusion missiles and plasma bursts. Human fighters died by the dozens, blown apart or vaporized. But for every fighter destroyed, 2 more took its place. They were too small, too fast, too many. The Valdra's point defense systems couldn't track them all. Seojun's squadron reached the first Extinction-class vessel and deployed their EMP weapons. The electromagnetic pulse washed over the massive ship, and its systems began failing. Lights flickered. Weapons powered down. The charging sequence for the planet killer halted at 70%. "Target disabled," Seojun shouted, moving to target 2. But the Valdra's weren't defenseless. Their capital ships turned their main batteries on the human fleet, and the true battle began. Beams of energy sliced through space. Railgun slugs crossed paths with fusion missiles. Ships on both sides exploded, adding their brief stars to the darkness. Commander Soman Lee, aboard the research vessel Galileo, worked frantically at her station. Around her, scientists and engineers monitored their experiment. Project Quantum Disruptor had been theoretical until 3 days ago. Now it was humanity's last hope. "Status," Soman demanded. "Calculations complete," her lead scientist, Dr. Hajin Choi, reported. "The warheads are ready. But Commander, we need to get them close to the Extinction-class vessels." "Really close. Within 500 meters. Soman opened a channel to the bomber wing. "Lieutenant Minji Seo, do you copy?" The young pilot's voice came back steady despite the chaos around her. "Copy, Commander. We're ready. You need to deliver a payload directly to the Extinction-class vessels, closer than any bomber has ever gotten to a capital ship. It's a suicide run, Minji." There was a pause. Then Minji responded, "Understood, Commander. All birds, form on me. We've got a delivery to make." 12 bombers broke from the main formation and dove toward the massive Valdra's vessels. Valdra's fighters swarmed them immediately. The first bomber died within seconds, torn apart by enemy fire. Then the second. The third. Minji twisted her bomber through a storm of weapons fire, her co-pilot calling out threats as fast as they appeared. She watched her squadron die around her, but she kept flying. 4 bombers left. 3, 2. "Almost there," her co-pilot shouted. 400 meters. 300. Valdra's plasma fire caught her left wing, tearing it away. The bomber spun wildly, but Minji fought the controls, using their spin to their advantage. They tumbled past the Valdra's point defense, too erratic to track. "Release!" Minji screamed, and the quantum disruptor dropped free. Her bomber exploded a second later, but she had done her job. The warhead continued forward, guided by its own systems. At 100 meters from the Extinction-class vessel, it detonated. The quantum disruptor created a sphere of distorted space-time. Inside that sphere, the laws of physics went insane. Molecules lost cohesion. Atoms drifted apart. The massive Valdra ship simply ceased to exist as a solid object, breaking down into its component particles and dispersing into space. The 2 other bombers that survived delivered their payloads to the remaining Extinction-class vessels. All 3 planet killers died within 30 seconds of each other. The threat to Earth was eliminated. "Now," Admiral Jiho ordered. "All ships full assault. Take out their command ship." Fleet Captain Dong Yun Lim led the spearhead from his battleship Righteous Fury. 6 battleships and 20 cruisers formed a wedge that drove straight into the heart of the Valdres formation. Their combined firepower carved a path of destruction through the enemy fleet. "Target their flagship," Dong Yun commanded. "I want that ship dead." Calther watched the humans approach and felt something he had not experienced in 4 decades of warfare: fear. These creatures were insane. They fought with no regard for their own survival, throwing themselves at his ships with reckless abandon. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. "All ships, focus fire on those battleships," he ordered. "Stop them." But the humans were protected by their carrier-launched fighters, by their destroyers and frigates, by their willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The righteous fury took a dozen direct hits but kept coming. Its armor was scorched black, its shields were failing, but Dong Yun drove his ship forward until it was hull-to-hull with Calther's flagship. "Boarding teams, go!" Dong Yun ordered. Marine Colonel Nari Moon led 200 of humanity's finest warriors through the breach. They cut their way into the Valdres ship using plasma torches, then flooded through the corridors in their combat armor. The Valdres fought back desperately, but the humans were faster, better trained, and absolutely unwilling to lose. Nari found Calther on the bridge, surrounded by his command staff. The old Valdres warrior drew an energy blade and faced her. "You have killed me already, human," Calther said in perfectly translated English. "My fleet is broken. My life is forfeit. But know this, you have made an enemy of an empire that spans the stars. More will come. They will always come. Then we'll keep fighting," Nari replied. She raised her weapon. "Until you learn to leave us alone." The battle ended 3 hours later. The Valdres fleet retreated, leaving behind over 2,000 destroyed ships. Calther was dead. The Extinction-class vessels were destroyed. Earth had survived. In the command center, Admiral Jiho collapsed into his chair, exhausted beyond measure. They had lost 300 ships, 40,000 dead. But Earth still existed. Humanity still existed. Commander Selman approached with a tablet. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Over a dozen species want to talk to us. They saw what we did. They want to fight alongside us." Geo looked up at her, then at the stars visible through the viewports. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had just proven that the Valdres Empire could bleed. The diplomatic vessel Harmony dropped out of hyperspace near the Kazrik homeworld. President Mina Cho stood on the observation deck, watching the planet grow larger in the viewport. It was beautiful in an alien way, with crystalline structures covering its surface that caught the light of its twin stars and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Captain Junho Nam stood beside her, his hand never far from his sidearm. "Madam President, my security team has swept the ship 3 times. I still don't like this. We're far from Earth, deep in alien space, meeting with species we barely know." "We don't have a choice, Captain," Mina replied. "We hurt the Valdres Empire badly, but they still have 10,000 ships. We need allies." The Kazrik Greeting Committee met them in the grand chamber carved from living crystal. First Minister Torvin was a being of pure silicon, his body geometric and faceted, light moving through him in complex patterns that served as his language. A translation device on Mina's collar converted the patterns to speech. "President Cho, you honor us with your presence," Torvin said, his voice somehow warm despite the mechanical translation. "We have watched your species fight the Valdres with great interest. You have accomplished what we could not. You made them bleed." "At great cost," Mina replied. "We lost tens of thousands. Our shipyards are destroyed. Our fleets are damaged. We need time to rebuild." "Which is why we propose an alliance," Torvin said. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing dozens of star systems. "The Kazrik Federation controls 80 systems. We have resources, manufacturing capacity, and a fleet of 1,200 ships. Together, we could stand against the Valdris. Mina studied the display carefully. What do you want in return? Your technology, Torvin said simply. Your stealth systems. Your railgun designs. Your quantum disruptors. These are weapons that can change the balance of power in the galaxy. Before Mina could respond, Commander Haijin Yun leaned close and whispered urgently, Madam President, we need to talk, privately. They excused themselves to a secure room on the Harmony. Haijin activated a signal jammer and pulled up files on her tablet. We have a problem. I've been monitoring all communications in and out of our delegation. Someone has been sending encrypted messages to an unknown recipient. A spy? Mina asked, her heart sinking. Yes, Madam President. And I think I know who it is. The investigation moved quickly. Security Officer Sanjay Kao had been tracking the transmission patterns for days, narrowing down the possibilities. When the evidence finally pointed to one person, Sanjay felt sick. Ambassador Young-Soo Park had served humanity for 30 years. He had negotiated the treaties that established the first colonies. He had represented Earth at dozens of interstellar conferences. He was respected, trusted, and completely compromised. They confronted him in his quarters aboard the Harmony. Young-Soo sat calmly in his chair, his hands folded in his lap, no surprise on his face when Sanjay and two security officers entered. You know, Young-Soo said simply. How long? Sanjay demanded. How long have you been selling us out? 20 years, Young-Soo replied. His voice was tired, defeated. They approached me when I was serving at the colony on Kepler Station. My daughter was sick, dying from radiation exposure. The Valdris offered me advanced medical technology in exchange for information. I told myself it was harmless. Just reports on colony populations. Trade figures. Nothing military. But it escalated, Mina said from the doorway. She had insisted on being present for this confrontation. Young-Soo nodded. Always just one more piece of information. One more report. Then they destroyed Kepler Station, and I realized they had been using my data to target vulnerable colonies. I tried to stop, but they had recordings of our communications. They threatened to expose me, to kill my family. So you kept betraying us, Sanjay said coldly. So I kept my daughter alive. Young-Soo shot back, his composure cracking. You don't understand what that's like. Watching your child suffer, knowing you can save her. What would you have done? Not this, Mina said quietly. Never this. She looked at Sanjay. What information has he transmitted since we arrived? The location of our Titan shipyard, Sanjay replied grimly, and the schedule of our fleet movements. The message went out 3 hours ago. Mina felt her blood turn cold. The Titan shipyard was humanity's primary construction facility, the place where they were rebuilding their fleet. If the Valdris knew about it, they would strike immediately. Send a warning to Titan, she ordered. Emergency evacuation. Get everyone off that station. But they were already too late. Defense Coordinator Curie, Jang was reviewing production schedules when the alarms began screaming. Her command center at Titan Station erupted in chaos as sensor readings flooded the screens. Multiple hyperspace signatures. Her tactical officer shouted. Valdris fleet emerging. 600 ships. Curie didn't hesitate. Sound general quarters. All civilian personnel to evacuation ships. All military vessels. Launch immediately. We need to buy time for the evacuation. The Valdris strike force was led by Shadow Commander Thrace, a specialist in quick, brutal raids. His ships dropped out of hyperspace already firing, their weapons targeting the shipyard's reactors and construction bays. Thrace had one objective: destroy humanity's ability to build new ships. Captain Wanshik, Chai commanded the destroyer Defiant Guard, one of 20 ships defending the station. His small fleet was outnumbered 30-1, but they threw themselves at the Valdris with desperate courage. They knew they couldn't win. They just needed to buy time. All ships, defensive pattern Omega, Wanshik ordered. Protect the evacuation transports at all costs. The battle was fierce and close range, fought among the construction docks and half-built ships. The Defiant Guard took hit after hit, its armor failing, its crew dying at their stations. But they kept fighting. Curie watched from her command center as evacuation ship after evacuation ship launched, carrying thousands of workers to safety. Then, a Valdris cruiser broke through the defensive line and targeted her station directly. Impact in 30 seconds, her tactical officer reported. "We need to evacuate, Coordinator." Curie looked at her screens. 3 more evacuation ships were still docking, loading the last of the civilian personnel. If she abandoned her post now, those ships would be defenseless. She made her decision. "Signal Captain Chai. Tell him to cover the last transports and then retreat. The rest of the fleet should fall back to Mars. What about us?" Her executive officer asked. "We're staying," Curie said calmly. She began entering override codes into her console. "Get to the escape pods. All of you. You have 60 seconds. Her staff fled. Curie waited until she was alone. Then she activated the station's self-destruct sequence. The fusion reactors that powered Titan Station were powerful enough to propel ships across the solar system. When they exploded all at once, the energy release would be catastrophic. Captain Wanshik saw what she was doing and understood immediately. "All ships full burn. Get clear of the station, now." The last evacuation transport cleared the docking bay. The human defenders retreated at maximum speed. And Titan Station, humanity's greatest construction facility, became a miniature sun. The explosion caught the Valdris strike force completely by surprise. Thrace's flagship was vaporized instantly. Ships within 1,000 kilometers were destroyed or crippled. The blast waves scattered the surviving Valdris vessels. Their formations shattered, their assault broken. Of the 600 Valdris ships that attacked Titan, fewer than 200 escaped. But humanity's primary shipyard was gone. Along with Defense Coordinator Curie, Jang and 3,000 workers who couldn't evacuate in time. Back on the Kazarek homeworld, President Mina received the news with a heavy heart. She sat in the conference room aboard the Harmony, surrounded by the representatives of humanity's new allies. The Kazarek had agreed to the alliance. 3 more species had joined them. The Threxy, bird-like creatures with brilliant plumage and sharp minds. The Delurians, aquatic beings who lived in specialized environment suits. And the Vrin, insectoid warriors whose hives had suffered under Valdris occupation for decades. "We have lost much," Mina said to the assembly. "But we have gained something more important. We're not alone anymore. The Valdris Empire has ruled through fear and isolation, conquering species one at a time. But we stand together now, and together we will show them that their age of domination is over." War Marshal Subin Ro presented the plan that would change everything. Operation Hammerfall. We take the fight to them. We strike at their fortress worlds, cut their supply lines, and force them to defend on multiple fronts. They're strong, but they're spread thin across 2,000 systems. We can use that against them. Admiral Jiho studied the tactical maps. It was audacious, aggressive, and extremely dangerous. It was also exactly what they needed to do. "When do we launch?" he asked. "The coalition fleet will be ready in 2 weeks, Subin replied. 5,000 ships from 5 different species. It will be the largest military offensive in 1,000 years. What they didn't know was that the Valdris had prepared their own trap. Among the Threxy delegation were 3 agents who had been compromised years ago. their minds altered by Valdris technology. They would sabotage the Coalition fleet at the critical moment, ensuring that the offensive would end in disaster. The Coalition fleet gathered at the edge of the Korthus system, 5,000 warships from 5 different species, the largest military force assembled in a millennium. Admiral Jiho Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship Unity, surrounded by holographic displays showing the disposition of his massive fleet. Beside him stood representatives of each allied species, united in purpose. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Silman Lee reported from her tactical station. "The Threxy wing is in position. The DeLorean heavy cruisers have formed the vanguard. The Vrin fighters are deployed. We're ready to jump." Jiho took a deep breath. According to their intelligence, the Korthus system contained a major Valdris industrial complex, but only moderate defenses. It was the perfect target for their first strike. Once they destroyed the factories there, they would cripple the Valdris ability to produce new warships. "All ships, engage hyperspace drives. Let's go teach the Valdris what happens when you start a war with Earth." 5,000 ships jumped as one, crossing the light years in seconds. They emerged from hyperspace, expecting a fight. What they found was a massacre waiting to happen. The Valdris home fleet filled the space before them. 12,000 warships arranged in a perfect kill zone, their weapons charged and ready. High Chancellor Velmorith's trap had worked perfectly. "Contact! Enemy vessels!" The tactical officer screamed. 12,000 ships! "Admiral, it's the entire Valdris home fleet." On the Valdris flagship orbiting the Valdris homeworld, High Chancellor Velmorith watched the Coalition fleet materialize in his trap and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His agents had fed false intelligence through compromised channels. The Coalition thought they were attacking a lightly defended industrial world. Instead, they had jumped directly into the heart of Valdris power. "All ships, open fire," Velmorith commanded. "Destroy them all." The Valdris fleet unleashed a storm of weapons fire that should have crippled the Coalition in the opening seconds. But then something unexpected happened. The Threxy ships, which should have been sabotaged, were not only functional but fighting at full capacity. Aboard the Threxy flagship Skywing, Commander Borashin smiled grimly. She had been posing as a weapons technician for 3 weeks, part of Admiral Jiho's intelligence network. She had identified the saboteurs, fed them false information about which systems to target, and ensured that when they tried to disable the Threxy weapons, they actually disabled non-critical secondary systems instead. "The trap has been reversed," Bora transmitted to Admiral Jiho. "Threxy ships are fully operational. And Admiral, you need to know something else. We have a second fleet." Because Admiral Jiho had learned the most important lesson of war: never commit all your forces to a single battle. He had held back 300 of humanity's best ships, hidden in a nearby system, waiting for the right moment. "Commodore J1, execute Alpha Protocol," Jiho ordered. 300 human warships emerged from hyperspace directly behind the Valdris home fleet. The Valdris were now caught between 2 fires. Their perfect ambush turned against them. "All ships, engage at will," Jiho commanded. "Target their capital ships. Disable their command structure. Show them what the Coalition can do." The battle that followed would be remembered for 1,000 years. Entire battle groups were annihilated in seconds. The Kazrik cruisers, with their crystal matrix hulls, absorbed incredible damage while their weapons carved through Valdris armor. The DeLorean ships, designed for underwater combat, moved with fluid grace that made them nearly impossible to target. The Vrin fighters swarmed like angry insects, each one piloted by warriors who had waited generations for this chance at Revenge Dot and the human ships. With their railguns and quantum disruptors and fearless crews, struck again and again at the heart of the Valdris fleet. Captain Isil Kwan commanded the carrier Unstoppable, leading a battle group of 8 carriers against the Valdris super dreadnoughts. These massive ships were the backbone of the Valdris fleet, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. "All wings, target the lead dreadnought," Isil ordered. "Concentrate your fire on the shield generators." Wave after wave of fighters launched from her carriers, sacrificing themselves to land killing blows. Isil watched her pilots die, each one a name, a face, a person who would never go home. But they were winning. The first super dreadnought's shields failed, then its armor buckled, and finally, its reactor went critical. "Target destroyed," her tactical officer reported. Moving to the next one. "All wings reform and attack," Isil commanded, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. "For everyone we've lost. For everyone we're protecting. Again." While the space battle raged, Captain Minho Chun led a team of elite Marines on the most dangerous mission of the war. They had breached the Valdris flagship, fighting their way through corridors filled with enemy soldiers, heading for one target, High Chancellor Velmarith himself. 30 meters to the throne room, Lieutenant Sumi Park reported, checking her tactical display. "Heavy resistance ahead." "Then we go through them," Minho replied. He raised his plasma rifle. "Marines with me." They stormed the throne room in a blaze of weapons fire. Valdris guards fell defending their leader, but the Marines pushed forward relentlessly. Finally, Minho stood face to face with the architect of so much suffering. Velmarith was massive, over 3 meters of muscle and scale and ancient warrior pride. He held plasma blades in each hand, the weapons of a Valdris duelist. Around them, the throne room was carved with the names of 100 conquered species, a monument to empire and domination. "You have fought well human," Velmarith said, his voice without fear. "You have destroyed my fleet, killed my warriors, but you will not leave this room alive." "I don't need to leave alive," Minho replied, raising his own weapon. "I just need you dead." They fought among the monuments to fallen civilizations. Velmarith was stronger, faster, with centuries of combat experience. But Minho had something the Valdris leader lacked. He fought for freedom, for home, for the right of his species to exist without chains. Every time Velmarith drove him back, Minho got up and came forward again. The duel lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, High Chancellor Velmarith lay dead on the floor of his throne room, and Captain Minho Chun stood over him, bleeding from a dozen wounds, but alive. "Target down," Minho transmitted. "The High Chancellor is dead." Across the Valdris fleet, the news spread like wildfire. Their leader was dead. Their fleet was shattered, and the coalition showed no signs of stopping. Local commanders began surrendering, their ships going dark, their weapons powering down. Admiral Jiho watched the Valdris fleet collapse and felt no triumph, only exhaustion. "All ships, cease fire. To any Valdris vessels that stand down, we offer honorable surrender. To those who continue fighting, we offer only death." The battle ended not with a grand explosion, but with silence. The shooting stopped. The Valdris home fleet, the force that had conquered 100 species and maintained an empire for 3,000 years, was destroyed. Of 12,000 ships, fewer than 3,000 survived, and most of those were damaged beyond immediate repair. The coalition had lost 1,800 ships, but they had won. The Valdris Empire was broken. 3 months later, President Mina Cho stood before the Galactic Assembly, the first human to address the gathered species of the galaxy. The assembly hall was ancient, carved from a single asteroid, with seating for representatives of 200 worlds. "Members of the assembly," Mina began, her voice calm and clear. 3 months ago, the Valdris Empire threatened Earth with destruction unless we surrendered our freedom. We refused. We fought. And with the help of our allies, we won. She paused, looking around at the assembled species. Some watched with hope, others with fear, all with interest. But Earth does not seek to replace the Valdris Empire with our own. We have seen the cost of conquest, the price of domination. We propose something different. The Galactic Concordat, a federation of free worlds where no species rules over another, where disputes are resolved through diplomacy, not war, where every species, no matter how small or how young, has a voice. The assembly erupted in discussion. For hours, they debated. Finally, the vote was called. 123 species voted to join the Concordat. The Age of Empire was over. A new era had begun. Admiral Jiho Kim retired to a small farm in the mountains of Korea. He tended his garden, watched the seasons change, and tried to forget the faces of all those who had died under his command. But he never truly forgot. Some nights, he still woke up seeing the explosions, hearing the screams. One morning, he received a message from his old crew. Humanity's first exploration vessel, the Pioneer, was about to launch. They wanted him to speak at the ceremony. He almost declined. He was tired of speeches, of ceremonies, of being reminded of the war. But then he thought about Captain Taejunbei, who had died ramming his ship into an enemy carrier. About Lieutenant Minji Seo, who had flown into certain death to deliver the weapon that saved Earth. About Defense Coordinator Curie Jang, who had sacrificed herself to protect the people she was sworn to defend. They had died so that humanity could be free, so that humanity could explore the stars, make friends, build a future. He owed it to them to see that future begin.